Welcome back to Taival Outdoors. My name is Joel, and as many of you know who have been following my channel for a while, you know that I like to talk about layering clothing, especially when it comes to winter months or colder months in general, but of course the basic principles of layering one's clothing do apply all year around. And I do find those principles very helpful in my own outdoor adventures, and that's why I was very interested quite early on when a Japanese company called Finetrack contacted me a while back and asked if I would like to review their take on a layering system. Finetrack's layering system consists of 5 different layers, first 2 being what I would consider the most important ones and also the most interesting ones. And that's exactly what I've been now reviewing for a while. So I have their first layer, which is called Elemental Layer, and then this blue shirt is actually level 2, which is called Base Layer. And already that's quite interesting because commonly when we talk about layering clothing, the first layer next to your skin is often considered to be your base layer. But in Finetrack's system, base layer is actually the second layer. There's quite interesting science and engineering that has gone behind this concept of splitting the, let's say, traditional thinking of base layer into 2 separate garments. And that is exactly what we're going to cover in today's video, as well as my own personal experiences regarding these 2 pieces of garments. I'm sure that that's something that you guys are mostly looking forward to when watching this. But anyway, let's do that indoors inside my gear room Varusto, where I can show you actual close-ups of these items as well when we go through the details and experiences and whatnot. So thanks for joining in, and I'll see you indoors. All right, here we are. So Finetrack's layering system, level 1 and level 2. Let's start with the level 1, which is the more interesting one and where Finetrack's kind of own twist on the standard layering system lies. So this is a very thin garment, practically see-through, kind of a mesh shirt. And I know mesh first layer isn't new by any means. Back in the days, there used to be mesh shirts made out of cotton, for example, and maybe other synthetic materials. Then in the past few years, we've seen kind of the trend of mesh shirts re-emerge in merino wool. However, Finetrack does use synthetic materials, and there's very good reason for that. And the mesh in itself is not that kind of standard netting, but instead this reminds me of something that I could see maybe in some sports specific clothing. And it is made out of synthetic materials because what's the main downside of wool, or the 2 main downsides, if I may? Number 1, durability. Number 2, wool retains water. We always talk about wool, how great it is because it does insulate you even when wool is wet. However, Finetrack has thought that, hey, what if the first next to skin layer wouldn't get wet at all? Then of course wool isn't necessarily the best possible material for that. And because this shirt is also very thin, almost see-through, as I mentioned, being made out of completely wool would mean that it would be likely that the durability would have some issues down the line. So it is a fully synthetic piece of clothing, and the main trick that they pulled off with the level 1, the elemental layer as they call it, is that it is also water repellent. This is a very interesting concept. It basically means that the first layer, the next to skin layer, does not retain moisture, but instead, of course, it does the purpose that the first layer is supposed to do. So it transports your sweat to the following layer. And it can do that very effectively as it doesn't retain that moisture in itself at all. So it just transports it very effectively to the next layer. in my experiences, that's exactly how this setup works. For example, just this morning, I went on a fat bike ride with my dog. Pretty basic ride for this time of the year, so still a bit of slushy snow, even a bit of ice here and there, mostly muddy, soggy ground, so it was quite hard pedaling and I was definitely sweaty after that 45 minutes. But when I took off my jacket, so I only had like windproof jacket on top of these 2 layers, and then tested my back, this level 2 or layer 2 piece of clothing was definitely wet, so sweat had accumulated here on its way to the outside world, away from my skin. But when I took this off and tested the elemental layer, it was completely dry. I couldn't feel moisture at all with my fingers. So yeah, as said, I've been testing out these 2 in combination for a while now, and done day hikes and stuff like that with backpack on. So I have been sweating and doing strenuous activities with these 2 on, and I can attest that the system does work as intended. And as hinted earlier, the purpose of then this blue shirt that I have on, this layer 2, is to absorb the moisture that the elemental layer is transporting, kind of wicking away from my skin, and disperse it across the fabric so it can further then evaporate and move towards the, well, outside air. During warmer months, you can of course run just these 2 layers alone, or to the next layer and then towards the outside air. So all of your garments, when talking about layering and doing activities outdoors where you do sweat, the purpose of each garment should be, in the end, to deliver that excess moisture away from your body. And at least based on these 2 layers that I've been able to test now with Finetrack, it seemed to work just like that. So these 2, at least in conjunction, work great. The next layers would be layer 3, which is the kind of mid or insulation layer, 4 windproof layer, and 5 then waterproof layer. So you're really like hard shell jackets and pants and stuff like that. Maybe I will have a chance to cover out the whole layering system in the future. However, maybe at this point is also worth mentioning that there is one but when it comes to this piece of clothing from Finetrack. And this is a bit of an oddity because so far in my testing, I don't really have anything specifically negative to say about this piece of clothing. Of course, understanding that my testing time has been quite limited, but if you are looking to get some of these clothing pieces for yourself, especially this elemental layer, I do recommend checking that out. Be aware that the sizing is in Japanese sizes. And if we look at Finetrack's pictures on their website, you can see the clothing and presumably Japanese people wearing them. But my personal build is quite different than maybe an average Japanese person's build. For example, I have 115 centimeter chest. I'm 191 centimeters tall. And I have a really long reach, which means that many garments have issues regarding sleeve length, especially. So in fact, this level 2 shirt that I'm wearing is size XXL, and the elemental layer is a bit more of a tight form-fitting garment in general, so this is in XL. It does fit me, but I would probably not show it on me on camera or I would get demonetized, if you know what I mean. But regardless, maybe I'll quickly show you guys the sleeve length. So XXL clothing, Japanese sizes. So when I have my hands relaxed, arms on my side, the sleeves are okay. If I'm doing a lot of reaching out and stuff like that, you can see that the sleeves right a bit high for me. So, you know, that's more of an issue for me personally. I have very long legs, long arms, and there are not many brands of clothing in general that can accommodate these weird measurements that I have. And maybe as a final note, if you are a merino wool purist and you are still watching this video, first of all, congratulations, you've made it. Finetrack does offer some clothing that's made out of a mixed blend, so it does have merino wool as well as synthetic materials. As I've mentioned in my previous layering videos, when you do combine merino wool with something else, you usually do tend to get kind of a mix of and best of both worlds, if you will. However, when I was talking with Finetrack, we noticed that none of the merino wool clothing at that time had any XXL sizes in stock, so I reviewed these fully synthetic pieces instead. I will continue to wear these clothing, especially during summer months. I want to see how well these perform as kind of standalone pieces, if you will, and I will give you guys any relevant updates if there are any then during the coming months. If you have any further questions, please leave them down below. I will answer them to the best of my ability. And if you want to check out Finetrack's clothing, there's a link in the description. And if you do purchase some, it also provides a bit of a kickback to the channel and helps me produce more videos like these. But there you go. What do you guys think about Finetrack's concept of layering, especially this elemental layer? So water repellent, super wicking kind of mesh shirt. I think it's quite neat, and I will definitely be using this as my next to skin layer now moving forward. But that's all for this time. You've been watching Taival Outdoors. My name is Joel, and I will see you all in the next one.